everyone. I am Amina Dimaokor Hakyas from BSEd English 3A. Today, we will be discussing about the affective domain.
Every classroom requires the inclusions of 3 domains. First is the cognitive domain, second is the psychomotor domain, and the third one is the affective domain. In this video, we will be discussing about the affective domain. So what is affective domain? Affective domain describes the way we deal with things emotionally. This includes the feelings, belief, emotions, values, appreciations, and attitudes and motivations. Catwool and Bloom in 1964, the taxonomy of affective domain describes the 5 categories or levels under affective or active learning. These levels, which are listed from the simplest behavior to the most complex one. These are receiving, responding, valuing, organizations, and internalizing values, also known as characterization by values. In the receiving level, this involves awareness of feelings and emotions, willingness to hear or give selected attention, and giving focus to particular thing in the environment. Examples: at the end of the lesson, the learners must have listened attentively to the class discussion. Second, or listened to and remember the names of the people they have just met. Verb associated to the receiving level in affective domain. First is to accept, second is attend, third is developed, and fourth is recognize, and many more. Second level, responding. Responding is committed in some small measure to the ideas, materials, or phenomena involved by actively responding to them. Examples: at the end of the lesson, the students should be able to comply with, to follow, to commend, to volunteer, to spend leisure time in, and to acclaim. These are the verbs appropriate for the affective domain and responding level: complete, comply, cooperate, discuss, examine, obey, respond, and many more. Third level in the affective domain is valuing. Valuing is willing to perceive by others as attaching importance to certain ideas, materials, or phenomena. Examples: at the end of the lesson, the students should be able to increase measured proficiency in, to relinquish, to subsidize, to support, and to debate. Behavioral verbs appropriate for the affective domain in valuing level. First is accept, defend, devote, pursue, seek, and many more. The fourth level in affective domain is organization. Organization is relating the value to those already held and bring it into a harmonious and internally consistent philosophy. The example of organizations are: at the end of the lesson, the students should be able to discuss, to theorize, to formulate, to balance, and to examine. Behavioral verbs that are appropriate for the affective domain and organization level: modify, discriminate, display, order, organize, systematize, weigh, and many more. The higher level in affective domain is characterization. Characterization by value or value set is to act consistently in accordance with values he or she has internalized. The examples of characterizations are: at the end of the lesson, the students should be able to revise, to require, to be rated high in the value, to avoid, to resist, to manage, and to resolve. Behavioral verbs that are appropriate for the affective domain and characterization level: internalize, verify, require, revise, rated high in the value, avoid, resist, manage, resolved, and many more.
And I define the second reporter through effective learning competences. So, what is effective learning competences? Effective desired learning competences are often stated in the form of instructional objective. So, what is instructional objective? For instructional objective, we have specific, measurable, observable students' behavior. For specific, this objective should be described precisely what the learner is expected to do. Measurable, learning outcomes that can be measured. Observable students' behavior should relate to what student should be able to do after instruction. For number 2, objective are the foundations upon which can build lesson and assessment that you can prove meet your overall lesson goals. For number 3, think of objective as tool you use to make sure you reach your goals. They are arrows you shoot towards your target. And number 4, the purpose of the objectives is to ensure that learning is focused clearly enough that both students and teacher know what is going on, and so learning can be objectively measured. In the first reporter, he discussed the affective domain. In particular, when we consider the learning competences, we also consider the following focal concept, which is the attitude, motivation, and the self-efficacy. First, we discuss the attitude. So, what is attitude? Are defined as a mental predispositions to act that is expressed by evaluating a particular entity with some degree in favor and disfavor. Attitudes are also attached to a mental categories. Attitude also is a feeling or opinion about something or someone, or you choose your attitude. Attitudes are comprised of 4 components: the cognitions, affect, behavioral intentions, and evaluation. First is cognitions. Are our belief, theories, expectancies, cause and effect beliefs, and the perceptions relative to the focal objective. This concept is not the same as feelings, but just the statements of belief and expectations which vary from one individual context to the next, or the process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through experiences. For example, the ability to reason logically is an excellent example of cognition, like problem solving and making judgmental about information. And number 2 is effect. The affective component refers to our feelings with response to the focal objective, such as fear, liking, or anger. For instance, the color blue invokes different feelings for different individuals. Some like the color blue, but other is not. Some associate the color blue with loneliness, while the other associate with calm and peace. And number 3, the behavioral intentions. Behavioral intentions are our goals, aspirations, and our expected response to the attitude object. And 4, evaluation are often considered the central components of attitude. Evaluations consist of the imputations of some degree of goodness and badness to an attitude towards an object. For example, as a teacher, dapat yung magbibigay tayo ng instructional materials, dapat alam natin as a teacher kung ito is nakakabuti ba sa ating students or hindi. So through of that, parang malalaman natin as a teacher if kailangan pa ba natin gamitin yun or hindi na. As a teacher or students, why study attitudes? Because it can influence the way we act and think in the social communities we belong. Individual has motivations to achieve her or his goal in life. What is motivation? The motivation is a reason or a set of reason for engaging in a particular behavior. We have the intrinsically and extrinsically motivations. So, what is intrinsic motivation? Intrinsic motivations occurs when a people are internally motivated to do something because if either brings them pleasure, they think it is important. For short, motivated to perform an activity for its own sake and personal rewards. For intrinsic motivation, motivated to perform an activity to earn a reward or avoid punishment. And for example, of intrinsic motivation, being paid to do a job is an example of extrinsic motivation. What is self-efficacy? Is an expression that one is capable of performing in a manner or attaining goals. It is believed that one has the capabilities to execute the courses of action required to manage prospective situation. And on the other hand, self-efficacy is the belief in your own ability to succeed in achieving goal, having confidence to know you can do whatever you set your mind to by managing how you think, feel, and behave.
The next one is the development of assessment tools. Assessment tools in affective domain in particular, which are used to assess the attitudes, interests, motivations, and self-efficacy have been employed or have been developed. There are certain good practices in developing these instruments, and we will discuss it through this topic. Self-report. Self-report is one of the tools that can assess the attitudes or interests or motivations of the students. Self-report is the most common measurement tool in the affective domain. It essentially requires an individual to provide an account of his or her attitudes or feelings toward a concept or idea or people. Self-report, sometimes called written reflections. The next one is rating scales. Is a set of categories designed to elicit information about a quantitative attribute in social science. Common examples are the Likert scale and 1 to 10 scales, for which a person selects the number which is considered to reflect the perceived quality of a product. The basic feature of any rating scale is it consists of a number of categories. These are usually assigned integers. Under the rating scales or the semantic differential scales, semantic differential scales or SD tries to assess an individual's reaction to specific words, ideas, or concepts in terms of ratings on bipolar scales defined with contrasting adjectives at each end. For example, love or hate, satisfied or unsatisfied, and likely to return or unlikely to return, with immediate options in between. Thurnston and Likert scale. Louis Thurnston is considered as the father of attitude measurement. He addressed the issue on how favorable an individual is regard to a given issue. He developed an attitude continuum to determine the position of favorability on the issue. We can see in the screen the example of Thurnston scale. So we can see that in the statement number 1, it implies 5 categories or 5 attitudes depending on the participants or respondents' answer. It could be strongly agree, agree, neither agree or disagree, disagree, or strongly agree. Another example is the Likert scale. We can see on the screen a statement with the response options, same as the Turnstein scale, but the Likert scales differs from the response options. So first response option is strongly disagree, second is disagree, third is agree, and fourth one is strongly agree. On the other hand, in 1944, Gutmann suggested that the attitude should be measured by multidimensional scales as opposed to unidimensional scales such as developed by Turnstein and Likert scale. Gutmann pointed out that there should be multidimensional view of attitude construct. He developed the Gutmann scaling. The major characteristics of this scale is that response to one item helps predict the responses of other items. So I have here the example of a basic Gutmann scaling. So according to its meaning, response to one item helps predict the responses of other items. So here's the example in your screen. So are you willing to permit immigrants to live in your country? So Gutmann scaling has two options, the agree or disagree. If you permit the immigrants, if you choose agree, then you permit immigrants to live in your country, then probably the number two answer is you permit also the immigrants to live in your neighborhood. But if you did not permit the immigrants to live in your country and you choose disagree, then probably the answer would be in number two should also be disagree. So that is the point of Gutmann scaling. Last one is the checklist. Checklist is the most common and perhaps the easiest instrument in affective domain is to construct a checklist. We all know the use of checklist, right? So I wouldn't explain it further, but if you wish to, I would show it to you. We have here an example of checklist. Can you check it on your screen? So checklist is, it can be answerable by yes or no, right? It's depend upon your willingness to do so. Thank you.